Good morning. Oh, come on, we can do better than that. Good morning. There we go. I love these big, long rooms. Either you're going to be seeing my face or my butt, right? The whole time, one of the two. All right. I'm so excited to be here. You know, yesterday, the incredible privilege to spend a couple hours with a lot of you and see your passion and what you're talking about and to understand wild complexities and the amazingly cool stuff that you're doing. And what was so clear was how passionate you all are about this industry and about the work that you do and the businesses that you're in. And so what I wanted to do today was to share what I'm passionate about. And that's to make a great company culture. That's to have people in your organization that are helping you achieve these great things, that you're not dragging them along, they're pushing you forward. Right, helping your businesses in the right way. That we have good, healthy interactions with our employees, that we have a great company culture, and that we can ultimately survive when things get tough. Because nothing really ever happens that's great when things are okay, when things are calm, when everything is going just fine. That's not when we make our biggest improvements and our biggest changes. It's when adversity hits us. It's when we get challenged. When somebody makes a stupid law or somebody changes the rules on us or whatever, and we have to innovate and we got to figure it out and we've got to survive. In fact, that's what happened to me. I started my business in 2001, just after 9/11. I was too young and too stupid to know not to start a business right after a terrorist attack and a recession. But we figured it out. And we went along for a few years, and then 2008 hit, and there was the big recession, and all the mortgage companies went out of business. And the problem with that was that in my great wisdom, I had said, let's go hard on the mortgage industry. They're hiring like gangbusters, and that was great for my business. And suddenly 40% of my clients disappeared and 40% of my receivables gone. And I'm like, what are we going to do? And I turned to my team, and I turned to my employees, and I said, we've got to come up with great ideas. We've got to figure this out. And they all stared at me and waited for me to give them the answer. And I was pissed. I was frustrated. I went home. Do they not care? Do they not want this business to succeed? Do they not want jobs? And I realized after a few days of complaining and being a bit of a git that it was my fault. I had created a culture where I was the idea guy, and they were really good at implementing my ideas. I had not created a space for them where good ideas from them was the right thing, or that was the norm. And so it was my fault. I had no one to blame but myself that nobody was coming up with great ideas. And so I said, we've got to change the culture. If we're going to survive, if we're going to somehow make it through this, we've got to change the culture. And back in 2008, I said, okay, great. There must be one book out there that will tell me exactly how to do this. And much to my dismay, there wasn't. There were lots of pieces, lots of different ideas and concepts out there, but there wasn't like, Culture 101 or the Dummy's Guide to Culture hadn't come out yet, and I couldn't just open it up and go do it. And so I began interviewing hundreds and thousands of executives from around the world on my podcast. I read every flippin' book I could find, talked to every person I could find that was halfway smart or had a really successful company, and I began to uncover some things. I began to find out that there was some truths out there, things that weren't packaged nicely, weren't easy to understand, that could really, really help us. But the big problem I had was that to create a spectacular culture, I couldn't figure out exactly which things I should do and in which order. I had a list of about 100 things that would seem like a good idea, but what am I actually supposed to focus on? Do I do this thing, and does that make us better, or do I do this thing over here? This guy says this, and this woman says that. Like, I had a hard time figuring out, what is that list? How do you prioritize what's important? And I realized that's actually where people struggle. They hear so many things. You hear your competitors doing this thing now. You go to a conference and you learn something, and you have all and you don't have clarity on what you're supposed to do with your people. In fact, most leaders don't spend a lot of time really thinking about what kind of leader they want to be. They don't actually spend a lot of time thinking about the culture they want. It's, hey, we do this thing, we make this thing, we need to sell it to those people, let's go do it. And we don't think as much about what does that look like to get from here to there. And so it's super important that we understand where to focus. That's what WTF means, nothing else. I don't know what you guys are thinking. Where to focus. I want to tell you a quick story that kind of helps you understand why it's important to know where to focus. So my wife and I don't know, 18 years ago or so, we decided we were going to adopt a child. And we decided to adopt this boy from Russia. And then they called us about a month in the process and said, oh, by the way, he has a brother, of course. So now we're adopting two. We were just going to get one. And we adopted the two boys, and then we met this girl in the orphanage with them, and we ended up adopting a third. So we went from 0 kids to 3 kids, and they're not young. At the time, they were 10, 8, and 4.5. Okay? So from 0 to 3 in 11 months. At my house, it's go big or go home. Right? In fact, I'm supposed to go pick up my second Great Dane puppy later on this week. So it's definitely go big or go home. And so on the final flight to go get our daughter, this is now the 5th time I've been to Russia, and I get on an Aeroflot flight. And I don't know if anyone's ever flown Aeroflot. It makes Spirit Airlines seem like a luxury airline. Okay? And we get on the plane. LAX to Moscow is like 12 and a half, 13 hours. It is not a short flight. And we get up and we start going, and I notice that we're not going the way I expect. We're sort of heading towards San Francisco, and that's not, we should be kind of going up towards Montreal, that kind of way, the way that kind of goes up and down. And, well, we're going to San Francisco. And I notice the plane is lunging and acting funny, and no one's saying anything. And then suddenly, like, all of the stewardesses stop doing service, and they just disappear. And we're on our own. And then I noticed, like, this is back in the days of Blackberries and Palm Pilots. By the way, this is how you know if you're old or not. Do you know if you know what that is? And so everyone's got them out, and they're, trying to get a signal, trying to hang by the window and doing everything they could to try to communicate. And what we realized was there was now liquid coming out of the wings. And I go, that's not normal. Okay. And I'm sitting next to my wife, and I'm sitting next to another guy who was an engineer, and we figured out they must be letting fuel out of the plane. They must be dumping fuel. And it now starts getting around the plane that we're dumping fuel. And people are getting upset. And people are talking about this. And finally, the pilot comes on, and I swear he spoke for 10 minutes in Russian. I know, like, some baby Russian. I didn't understand any of it, and he's just talking and talking and talking. And finally, the mic goes off, and I go, okay, cool, now we're going to get it in English. Finally going to know what's happening. And he gets on, and he goes, we go back to LAX. That was it. That was all we got.